So now it's time to look at stop loss placement. Where do we put stop losses on high time frame trades? And what are the best areas to actually position your stop to get the best risk reward, but also to get the best profits out of your trades? Well, we can see from this trade that we've taken on USD CAD, the simple and most effective way to actually position your stop is to simply put it beneath or above the supply or demand zone that you're trading from. So we are looking at this demand zone for an entry here. So what we would do is put our order on, or obviously look for the confirmation. And then our stop loss would go underneath that level and underneath that zone, sweeping out the low to make sure that unless the low gets pushed through, which would invalidate the trade and make it a trade we don't want to take, we stay safely in. Some people get caught up chasing risk reward and they end up putting an entry on and a stop loss very close within the zone. Sometimes this may work, but most of the time it's not going to, and you're going to run into way more losses than you need to take simply because you are trying to push your luck too much. The reason you need to be good with your stop loss placement, and you need to sometimes give it a little bit more room than you may want to on the risk reward side, is because it is better to take, for example, 3 winning trades at 5R than 3 losing trades at 1R each, but you were going for 10R, okay? So rather than going for the 10R and actually hitting stops loads, if you just went for 5R and had a slightly wider stop, chances are you're going to make more money anyway, because you are not going to get stopped out as much as when you get stopped out because of your bad stop loss placement. So there are a few different things for us to talk about in the topic of stop loss placement. The biggest one is obviously going to be clearing lows and clearing highs. So if you're entering from a zone, clear the low of the zone. If you are entering from a supply zone, clear the high of the zone. And that is how you are going to position your stops on the majority of trades. Now, sometimes we are going to take a position that sits within structure, which means we may enter here. So how do you position your stop? Because if you are entering here, you obviously don't want to clear the whole low. For example, if you were to get an entry here, you wouldn't want to stop loss this big because the risk reward is going to be completely terrible, even if the trade works out. You're going to have to make, like in this example, 36 pips before you even make 1% profit if you are risking 1%. Trades like this, in my opinion, are not worth it, and I would actually rather miss a trade than take a trade with ridiculous stop loss size, because at the end of the day, it's not a high probability bet, and it's going to take way too long to actually play out, and we could get a much better entry. So when you're entering trades in middle areas like this, there are a few different rules we should follow. Obviously, the primary one is to clear the low of the zone, but there's also a few other things to consider as well. So we're going to talk about those. I'll find a new example now of a different trade with a different entry, and we can run through that together. So we're looking at a different example here on Euro GBP. Let's say we found a buy idea. We can see the structure has broken to bullish from this point onwards. We are looking at this demand zone area here for a potential buy. Now, when we have a trade like this, where the trade is being taken midway through a range, so normally the ideal entries are going to be at the higher lows down here. But because we don't have the privilege of actually buying there and we have to buy mid-range, we have to consider where is the safe place to put our stop. Now, some people actually go with a really bad risk reward, still clearing the low with their stop loss. But let's say we were targeting the high, you can see that that absolutely destroys the risk reward, and a 1.8R position that needs 51 pips just to make under 2% is not going to be a move that we want to take. So what we can do instead is consider the actual new higher low. The best thing to do is actually go to a slightly lower time frame. So for this instance, we are looking at hourly trade. So let's shift it to the 15-minute and then see what the market is providing to us. Now, there are a few ways we can actually enter, a few ways we can position our stops. It's clear that this is the area of interest, this small imbalanced demand zone. Why is that? Well, if we look back to the concept of structure and market efficiency, we can see here we came in and we formed that low. Then we had a first breakup over this small structure here. We pulled back in, retested demand, pushed up, rolled back over, retested demand. Then this push up was not retested. So by scaling in, first things first, we got a better entry. We can actually look at entering like this with our target there. And what we can do from here is decide, do we want an aggressive stop or a conservative stop? A conservative stop is going to consider not only the zone we're buying from, but also the recent low and any wicks before that as well. So for the conservative stop, I would look towards this area just here, clearing this wick and clearing this wick as well for a nice conservative trade, 5.8R. So that's 5.8 times our risk if triggered, and that is going to be a very happy trade to work with. Now, some people who like higher risk reward and don't mind actually taking a few losses, maybe your psychology is better, may want to go with a aggressive style entry, which is just going to clear the zone. Now, this is actually accounted for, right? We see that this demand zone was retested. We see this demand zone was retested. So it does actually make sense to put our stop loss just underneath the zone. Obviously, it is going to be riskier, than if we clear the lows, because sometimes we're going to get wicks that push through the zone but then still respect it. So the aggressive take would look something like this, which actually turns the trade into around an 11.5 R. And it is a logical trade and it is a logical stop because we've cleared the low of the zone just about, and we know that the pricing here is efficient. So if you're going to go with aggressive entries like this, you need to check that the pricing before it is efficient. Obviously, this is the best place to buy from, but we need to consider then, okay, are there any imbalanced demand zones on this same little leg of structure that are likely to get wicked through before the trade works in our favor? If the answer is no, and you've checked the efficiency of the market prior to the entry, then you could go ahead and use this aggressive style approach, which obviously is going to add more risk to a position, but is going to give you double the risk reward if it works out. And now I will let them both play out, and you can see how effective both of these entries are. So the market comes in, forms a couple of equal lows, then we get a wick through, taps into the midpoint. Remember, we spoke about the midpoint entries on the 15-minute and above. And as you can see, it shot straight up and completed the target and actually continued trading further. So in this instance, the aggressive entry would have worked perfectly. That's not to say in every instance it's going to work perfectly. Sometimes you are going to get stopped out by a stray wick that may, form this kind of move and then push down into some of the lower boundaries of the market efficiency area here, like for example, into this area. And that is where these conservative approaches are going to actually get you higher win rates as opposed to the more aggressive ones. So you have to choose here. Are you a trader who is happy with a high win rate and slightly smaller but still great risk reward? Or are you a trader who has their psychology risk control entirely under control and they are happy to actually, hit a few more stop losses for the chance to actually pull in larger profits on the trades that are won? You can either opt for one and just stick to that, which obviously backtesting is going to teach you, which we will talk about in the next chapter, or you could be a bit conditional with it and work out in different instances which is the best approach to take. At the end of the day, it all comes down to testing, and I'm sure you will all work it out for yourselves using the education I've given you. And when we get to the backtesting, I'll help you do just that. But these are the two primary ways to enter when we are entering mid-range. We either want to go conservative, clear the low completely and clear any wicks before that, or if it is looking good, we can account for any market efficiency that's going on here, and if safe, we can go with a more aggressive style entry with a stop loss just below or just above the zone, depending whether you're buying or selling. And that is basically the key processes to stop loss management and stop loss placement on the high timeframes. In the next video, we're going to talk about managing your positions. We've spoken about entries, stops, exits, all of those things, but we need to talk about how to actually manage a position when you're in it. So it's time to do that now. I hope you've taken a few pointers from this video. Just another note as well, the stop loss placement is ever so slightly different on the low timeframes. So when you watch through to that, you may learn a few of the tips as well.